actually be there, be a part of this experience. I quite often say to people that I am honored when my dogs invite me into their world. And I've had so many people be like, what does that mean? It means that I have a dog that is out exploring, but then turns back and looks and is like, do you see what I'm seeing? Do you want to be a part of this? Do you want to see what this is? People that have watched my videos say, I always talk about the sticks that my dogs get. I'm like, that's the best stick you've ever got. Like, that's a really good one. And they want to know something? I mean it. Like, I mean it. I'm not just saying words. I'm like, I think that is a beautiful stick. The simple things that we can do to help deepen our bond without training. That's what we're talking about today. Let's get into it. Ready to have a calm and peaceful life with your dog without the stress of those fear-based behaviors? Hi, I'm Tracy, and I've been there, overwhelmed by all the conflicting dog training advice and unsure of what to do next. But now I help dog lovers like you simplify your life with your dog by building confidence naturally, fostering trust, and addressing those fear-based challenges. So, if you're ready, stop chopping those chicken wieners and let's get to it. This episode is brought to you by the Calm Down Dog Bootcamp, featuring Tracy
and Paisley,
happening February 10th and 11th.
You ever feel like you've tried everything to get your dog to listen and nothing seems to stick?
Yep, but I've got news for you. It's probably not a training problem.
Wait, what? Then what is it?
If your dog is overwhelmed or afraid, no amount of training is going to solve that. You need to focus on helping them feel safe first.
Oof, that's a game changer. How do we do that?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to cover in this boot camp. How to recognize the signs that your dog is struggling and what you should do instead.
So, less treats, more trust?
Less treats, more you. It starts with you.
Love it. Where do they sign up?
beyondobedience.ca/bootcamp. This is a free 2-day event happening February 10th and 11th.
Just 1 hour each day hanging out with us, and you'll walk away with real actionable steps to help your dog feel safe, calm, and secure.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I can't wait to see you there. Well, hello, my dog-loving friend. It's Tracy. Welcome to Beyond Obedience, the podcast. So excited that you are joining me today. I have to say, as a sidebar, let's just start off with a sidebar. Paisley and I had the best time recording those little commercials. Like, we had the best time writing out the scripts and recording those commercials. So I'm just going to do a shout out to Paisley and the Calm Down Dog Workshop Bootcamp that's coming up. That is sponsoring today's episode. So please be sure, if you haven't already, sign up for the boot camp. It's 2 days of fun and lots of good stuff. So we're pretty excited about it. All right, today let's talk about something that's really near and dear to my heart. Really, it is everything that is my company. It's the reason I named my company Beyond Obedience. It's this idea that if we're talking about the whole of our lives with our dogs, everything that we share with our dogs, that obedience is just the tiniest little portion of that whole, right? If we were to take one of those pie graphs, for example, it's literally a sliver of our life with our dogs is spent with the training and the obedience. At least it is in my life. I shouldn't say that's not everybody's life. There are people out there whose dogs are in competitions and they're working breeds and all of that stuff. And maybe their slice of the pie is a little bit bigger. But I think, for you and me, for the people that are sort of drawn to the work that I do, you share the same sort of experience with me. And that is that I just want to live with this species. I want to have the best life with this species. And I don't necessarily want to have a life of, constant commands and my dog is on place command or constantly walking at a heel or has an immaculate, downstay from 150 yards. Like, that's not the life that I want to live with my dogs. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I always want to point that out. To each his own. But I think you and I, my friend, are probably the same. We strive to have a fulfilling life with our dogs without having to rely on a lot of obedience. And that's why I teach this, right? This is Beyond Obedience. So today I actually want to talk about 3 simple ways that you can deepen your bond with your dog without training. Lots of people talk about relationship training and or how their relationship is with their dog. And it's sort of there's an obedience command, like an obedience component in that, like there's a training component in that. Like building respect with a dog means the dog has to respect you and the commands that you give. And that's not my vibe here, right? You know me by now if you've been following me for a while. If you're new to me, buckle in. It's a slightly different look at living with dogs, but it's the way I like to live and love my dogs. So I have these sort of ways, and this sort of came about very early on in my life. A little backstory about me, if you haven't heard this, but I came to this conclusion about the idea of beyond obedience when I started working with people and their dogs, and I was doing what I thought you were supposed to do. I was teaching people what I thought they needed to know to like have a quote unquote trained dog. And, that was teaching them sit and stay and down and all of those things. And what was interesting to me was that people would come back to the group classes or to their private lessons, and the dog would know the commands, but they wouldn't necessarily bettering their behavior. The dogs knew what sit meant or could do a down in the arena, with me, but they were still barking incessantly at the mailman. They were still, grumpy with the other dog or chasing the cat and doing all this stuff. And, people would come back and be like, yeah, the dog understands it, but not really getting it in real life. And many trainers would tell you that has to do with proofing, right? And there's truth to that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that's not right, but they'll talk about this idea that you didn't proof it, right? Teaching a dog a behavior when you're in the dog training class, you have to actually take that same behavior and proof it in many different areas. So the dog generalizes the commands and all of that good stuff. But that really wasn't what I was seeing. What I was seeing was, dogs understood, the commands, but it didn't change their behavior. And that's where I started really focusing on some ideas that I'm like, it's not really about the obedience. Like stuff can't be fixed with a well-timed sit, Now, don't get me wrong. Sitting and position certainly does help you, but not necessarily in the ways that we think. So let's take, for example, the position on a walk, right? Having your dog at a heel or teaching your dog to heel beside you doesn't necessarily fix your relationship. It doesn't make the dog necessarily respect you more or whatnot, but it does benefit you because having the dog be beside you on the walk means that you are part of the conversations going on. You're in their view. That's the first thing. Physically, you're in their peripheral vision. So you're now, therefore, a part of the conversations going on. You're a part of the experience with the dog. You have just a leverage issue, right? Being beside the dog, just the way that our bodies are versus where the dog's body is. I don't want to get too much into it. I talk a lot about this inside the Fearful Dog, but just our position being beside the dog gives us leverage to be able to utilize our tools to communicate to our dogs. Whereas if we were perhaps behind the dog, we've let the dog be ahead of us. Now we're no longer part of the conversation. They can't really see us. We're out of their periphery. They're just out there doing their own thing. So it matters. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but I don't think the act of training a dog to heel changes your relationship per se. Let me just put it that way. Okay. So I like to think about ways of building my bond that don't rely on training. So again, hear me when I say this, because I always have people that kind of come back at me saying that I'm suggesting that people don't train their dog. That's not what I'm saying. I do believe that training is teaching your dog English as a second language, right? It is important to have a shared language with your dog. It really does help the dog exist in Humansville. Okay. If you were, I'm not going to get too far into that. I end up standing on a soapbox about that just because I've been attacked so many times about this point. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying it shouldn't be the be all and end all. And let's take it one step further. If we're talking about communicating, especially with a different species, I think it is in our best interest to not only work to teach the dog how to understand us, but to work really hard for us to understand the dog. We're, quote unquote, the smarter species, right? That's debatable, but we're the smarter species, and yet we put all the pressure on the dog to understand us in Humansville, and very little pressure on ourselves to understand their language. And so I think there's something to be said about that. I quite often in my class, in my online class, I talk about this idea that you need to be fluid in both canine and the dog needs to be fluid in obedience to have like that shared language. I think that's fair. I don't know how I got on this topic because that's not what I want to talk about. Let's get into it. Let's get into it. 3 simple ways that you can deepen your bond without training. The very first thing is just honestly the power of being present, right? When you're there, be there. And what does that mean? That means I need you to get out of your head. Get out of your head. If you're going to take your dog for a walk, be there. Be 100% there, right? You got to get out. Like your brain is going to flip into your to-do list, the things that pissed you off. Like you're going to be thinking about the guy that cut you off on the way to work, all of those things. You need to get out of your head and really try to focus in on what's going on this walk. Actually be there. Be a part of this experience. I quite often say to people that I am honored when my dogs invite me into their world. And I've had so many people be like, what does that mean? It means that I have a dog that is out exploring, but then turns back and looks and is like, do you see what I'm seeing? Do you want to be a part of this? Do you want to see what this is? People that have watched my videos say, I always talk about the sticks that my dogs get. I'm like, that's the best stick you've ever got. Like, that's a really good one. And you want to know something? I mean it. Like, I mean it. I'm not just saying words. I'm like, I think that is a beautiful stick. I'm also weird and I like sticks. Ask my husband. I brought home many a stick and been like, can you make this into a walking stick? It's kind of cool. There's a stick on our wall. I will say that. I brought home a stick and I was like, can we mount this on the wall? Like, I like sticks too. So maybe that's why. So it's legitimate. I'm not like just saying it to be like, oh, that's a nice stick. And then I walk on, I'm like, that's a beaut. That's a beauty. Okay. So when I'm there with my dogs, I'm there with my dogs. I'm a part of this experience. I will go see what it is that they are sniffing. I will go see what it is that they're eating. And quite often, especially nowadays, that's frozen deer poop. But, I'm there. So when you're there, you got to get out of your head. Let all of that go for a second. And one of the ways that you can do that is, just sort of connect back with your breath, right? I mean, if you're like really like in your head, just take a deep breath, connect back with your breath, and then try to focus on the dog and be like, what are we doing? Like, what's going on? What's happening here? Okay. Now, you've heard me talk about the be with exercise, that I do be with on the go all the time, right? I use be with as a relationship gauger when I first meet with people. Usually if you work with me one-on-one, I'm going to ask you to do and record a be with session in your house and whatnot. But once you get really good at be with and being observant, you can do be with anywhere. I do be with on my trails all the time. I'll just stop and sit, just hang out with the dogs, watch life go by. It's amazing, right? Just sit and see what the dogs see. It's kind of cool. You can do that. And just, hang out, be there, be present. That's the power of presence. The second thing, the second simple way that you can deepen your bond is to do communication, but without obedience commands. Now, I'm going to tell you, this is the ask the dog stuff that I talk about quite often. And if you are someone who has done obedience, this might be a little bit more challenging for you because you're going to want to use your hand signals and whatnot that are queued up with a command. So I need you to kind of suspend that. If you're doing this game and you're playing this game and you want to communicate without the obedience, you got to kind of work really hard on it. Okay. I'm blessed in that way because my dogs don't know any commands. I mean, they sort of know their name, but anyway, so you want to play this game of asking the dogs. You're going to use your hands to communicate what it is that you want. And I would do this out on a walk too. I'm out on a walk. I'm going to tap a bench, just tap a bench and be like, can you get up here? Like tap the bench. And when they get up there, you're going to celebrate and be like, yeah, that's amazing. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in that's number 3, but using your hands to like guide them over things like, can you go over this? Letting them like seeing what they can do and you asking them to do it without leash pressure and just asking them, giving them the option. Okay. And this is one of those checks where if you have the time and it's like you're out on your walks or whatnot and you're doing some ask the dog, just do a little bit of a gut check. How much am I relying on my hands to manipulate my dog? Okay. When we're playing the ask the dog game, if you had to use your hands to physically move your dog, either by pulling your leash or grabbing a collar or whatnot, you didn't communicate with them. You used your hands. Using your hands is cheating. I always say that. If you used your hands, you cheated, right? Because dogs don't have thumbs. They can't grab things like that. So it's a cheat, right? Find a way that communicates to them in something that they understand. Ask them and see what they give you. And what you're going to find, especially if you've been used to sort of telling your dogs, we've done a lot of obedience with the dogs where we've told the dogs what to do. When you kind of switch gears to asking them, like, can you go over this rock, or can you get up on this bench, or can you go around this pole? And you're just using your hands, right? You're pointing and your body language and doing all of that stuff. When you get into that, you're going to see a big shift in your dog because dogs get so used to being told, right? I've told what to do. Stop, sit, stay, down. That when you start asking them and then you delight in them doing it, they're like, oh, this is a way more fun, right? And I have options. I'm not being told to do a command and then, getting either corrected because I didn't do the command or like a cookie or whatnot for doing it. This is more of a like, we're asking, we're communicating, but in a different way. So that's number 2. And then number 3, the third simple way that you can do that is by having shared experiences, going out for walks together, but with no agenda, right? Like, or the agenda is, maybe your agenda is this: I'm going to let the dog decide where we're going. Let the dog decide. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Where are we going to explore? Let's see the world from your vantage point. Right. And then when we do it, let's do some environmental agility there. Can you get up on this rock? Can you get over this log? And if your dog is like, I don't want to get over the log, then you go first. You jump the log first, right? Like you do it and then ask the dog if they want to come over. You're going to find such excitement when you do something and then the dog follows you. Like it's such an incredible bonding. I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this. One of the amazing students in my community was working with her dogs. And I don't know what this park was, but there was a huge culvert, a cement culvert, like one that you could walk through. It was part of the field. I don't know why. Anyway, she had asked her dog to go through it and he just wouldn't. Like he was clearly like, I don't know what's in there. He wasn't comfortable going through it. And, she had been working on all of the ask the dog and environmental agility and doing all the good stuff. And I was like, you first. And she went through it. She had to kind of duck, but you could walk through it, right? So she went through it. And the moment she went through it, her dog was like, oh, you can go through this. And he went through it. And then, and this is what warmed my heart. I loved the video so much. After she went through it and he went through it, he was so excited. He ran around and he just started going through it on his own. Like, look what I can do. And I mean, look what they can do. And you were a part of that. Like, you were the person that showed him that, like, was like, I can do this. You can do this. It was such, see, even when I relive watching that video, I was like, I love this video so much, like everything about this. So it's such an incredible way to build a bond. And it has nothing to do with training them to understand English as a second language. It's such an incredible way. So let's recap. Because that was it. Those were 3 simple ways. I say simple. They're simple in theory. They're not necessarily simple in, I mean, you have to be invested in this. But anyway, let's go back. Let's review. First simple way that you can do it is just be there, right? Wherever you are, be there. If you're with your dog, be there. Get out of your head. Don't think about your shopping list. Don't think about all of the craziness that is the world today. Just take that time to be present and be there. Simple way number 2 was to communicate, but communicate like a dog, right? Use your hand gestures. Don't use your words so much. Ask your dog if you have to use your hands, using your leash to pull or whatnot, then it didn't work. It didn't work, right? But taking a time to ask the dog in their language, using body language, energy, intent, all of that good stuff, right? And then the third and final way is to have those shared experiences. So when you're out there being present, you're asking them to do something, you're doing environmental agility, you're going first, you're going over the log, you're asking them to do things, and then you're delighting in everything that you do. Watch your relationship just skyrocket. Watch your dog now all of a sudden want you to be a part of their world. Right? They will start to ask you. I think, honestly, what happens with dogs, and I've seen it so many times, is, when we first get our puppy, for example, we get a puppy and it's all engaged with us because it thinks we're everything, right? And it's following us everywhere. And people are like, look at my puppy loves me. And then the puppy starts to be like, oh man, there's an environment. They start to become curious about the world around them. And that's when they start asking you questions. They start to be like, do you see this thing over here? Do you smell this thing over here? What about this thing over here? Now, we can't smell it, right? Our noses suck. Let's call a spade a spade. Our noses suck. But that moment where they keep asking and we're not there, we're not present because we're in our own heads, or we're like, I just got to take the dog for a walk, like I got to take the dog for a walk and then I got to get back to whatever. We stop responding to their ask. They stop asking. They literally stop asking. They're like, this human doesn't smell it. This human isn't getting it. This human does not understand how incredible this world is around us, right? And I think they stop asking. But the moment you start engaging with them in this way, your dog's going to start to ask again. They're going to say, hey, this is really awesome. Why don't you come and check it out? They're going to do that. And you're going to be amazed how well and how incredible your bond becomes with your dog. So there you go. There you have it, my friends. Simple ways to deepen your bond without training. Hey, listen, if you like this kind of stuff and you think, I've got a friend that would also like this kind of stuff, be sure to share this podcast with all your dog-loving friends, so that we can all build incredible bonds with our dogs. If you haven't already, please make sure that you take some time to give a girl a 5-star rating on Apple. It really does help to improve our podcast and pushes it out to more and more people. Leave me a comment on Spotify. If you're not on Apple, leave me a comment on Spotify. Let me know that you're loving this. Join us in the free Facebook group, Living Beyond Obedience, over on Facebook. And of course, make sure that you are part of the Calm Down Dog Bootcamp. You want to go to beyondobedience.ca/bootcamp Join us for that boot camp, 2 days hanging out with me and Paisley. We're going to be talking about all things on how to build that bond, how to build trust with a fearful dog, how to help reactivity. So much stuff is happening. There's going to be live Q&As. You can get your questions answered directly from me. All of this is free to you. Be sure to sign up, beyondobedience.ca/bootcamp. Can't wait to see you there. And as always, get out there today and be the person that your dog thinks you are, because your dog thinks that you are amazing. And so do I. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next episode. Oh, and one more thing. This podcast is meant for entertainment and education purposes only, and it's not meant to replace hands-on professional training. If you're really struggling with your dog, please reach out to a professional in your area. All right, I think that's it. Bye for now. Beep. This episode is brought to you by the Calm Down Dog Bootcamp.
But you nailed it.
It's a camp.
It's just you being hypercritical of that word.
Camp is hard. All right.